Hello, everyone. My name is Robin, and I am just thrilled to be here for our 8-segment series that is going to talk about resiliency, life with work balance, really appreciating wellness as you continue to do the very important work that you are doing for our community. So thank you so much to the organizers and the persons who have been able to support this programming. And without further ado, we're just going to jump right in. So for positioning, as I said, my name is Robin. I have worked as a scholar and a speaker and an educator for almost 20 years, exploring constructs of resiliency. What I'm really curious about is how we can help promote and foster our most resilient selves. Now, what we're going to do in this 8-part series is we're going to explore key concepts. Each video will have a big idea or one big framework or threshold concept that we are going to explore together in a way that's practical, it's helpful, and hopefully you'll be able to have a few gems or takeaways that you can put into practice right now. Before I go any further, I do just want to pause and recognize that the land in which I live upon and the land in which that we are recording these videos is land of the Anishinaabe First Persons of the Mississauga, and I'm a settler in this space, and I give thanks for the care and the teachings of the lands that have been passed on, and I recognize my role as listening and being an ally, and I'm doing my best. So to get us started, what I want to do is just kind of map out what these next couple of videos are going to look like. So the first one, we're going to talk about resiliency, pretty much resiliency 101. What's the big idea and how do you make it work for you? Then we're going to explore these ideas about stress and stress regulation and understanding our stress cycles. I want us to be able to learn how to stress wisely. And there is a way that we can do that. We're also going to explore the idea of life with work balance. And I appreciate that right now you are going above and beyond to be of a support to the communities of persons that you are supporting. You're working with vulnerable populations. You are essential. You are front lines. And I want to make sure that you are okay. And you have something at the end of the day so that way you can show up for your loved ones and the people who matter most to you. We're also going to talk about this idea about wellness redefined. And what I mean by that is I think wellness is a pretty interesting construct that we talk about quite readily. But one of the things that I've seen is that the health industry has commandeered it. And we think about it really only as sleep, nutrition, and exercise and absence of disease. I want us to go deeper. So we're going to have a chance to do that together. Then we're going to talk about this idea of pretty much putting this into practice. What do our schedules look like? How do we make sure we can prioritize, understand our non-negotiables to make sure we can show up and continue to be of service? One thing that's quite interesting about your sector is great research has talked about the fact that there is a high burnout rate. There's high persons leaving or exiting the career quite early on because of these variables of these different types of stressors. So we really want to make sure that you are well equipped so you can continue to do this work and feel as though there's meaning and purpose and that your values are in alignment. We're also going to talk about some goal setting because the reality is if we want to live in a sense of wellness with good resiliency, with our capacity for life with work, we need to have some goals and we need to know how do we meet our goals? What should our goals look like? What should we be striving for? So that way you can live rightly. You can live in a way that you're comfortable. And then we're going to explore the idea of owning your story. Each and every one of you has a story of what your resiliency looks like. You can do hard things. You've done it before. So I want to talk about how do we embolden one another to understand the importance of our story, the importance of learning, sharing, your knowledge holders of what this has been like, even just navigating the last little while as we navigate this global health pandemic. But you also have story before this, and we want to find a way to be able to capture that because what the research talks about, that will bring upon a sense of purpose, meaning, and deep value. So I'm very excited for everyone that is joining us that we can have these conversations. Thank you very much. And we're just going to jump right into essentially Resiliency 101. So when I started my work, and it's almost been about 20 years ago now, I was very curious about what do resilient people have in common? What are those key traits or behaviors or personalities strategies that really help people get through difficult seasons. So what I came upon in my work is that resilient people did have things in common. When I asked the question, what is the difference between someone who gives up when life is hard and someone who can get up, who can find a way to make the next right decision? What we came upon, it was really rooted in these 5 principles, these 5 ideas. So I'll tell you a wee bit about each one of them. The first one is a sense of belonging. It is absolutely crucial that you have a home team. You need people in your corner that are going to basically cheer you on, that are going to make sure that you are safe and you are protected. You need a soft place to land. We know that your home team is absolutely crucial for you to be able to have that sense of belonging. And we need to have that deep psychological safety with people who we love and love us, to be able to make the good decisions, to be able to be willing to take risks, fail forward, so to speak, and know we have a soft place to land. Now, this can be chosen family. This doesn't have to be biology. This is the people who you surround yourself with that actually are going to be cheering you on. They want to see you succeed. Now, one of the things that I've observed, these circles or these networks, they don't necessarily have to be really big. It's a few key people that you can be your most authentic self around. And also on the other side of it, sometimes this involves that you have to protect people. You have to have people that you have to stand that line for. So whether that be children or persons, vulnerable persons, or even elders that you're responsible for, we need to make sure that we have this home team in place. Now, as a gentle invitation, I would give pause just to recognize we want to make sure that as busy persons who are supporting adults with disabilities, that you want to make sure you are also protecting your home team. And what I mean by that is if we're not careful, your home team can take the brunt of your stress and your worry and all of the grief. So we want to make sure that we are making sure that we have something left when we show up with the persons that we love. So we don't want to be overly depleted. Now that's going to involve boundary setting, and don't worry, we're going to talk lots about how to do that effectively. Now, the second area in my theory is the idea of perspective. And often we talk about this as mindset or an attitude, and that's part of it. But the other part is this deep connection or an alignment between your head and your heart. I need your head and your heart on the same page. Sometimes some of the greatest deltas can actually be what we're thinking about and what we're feeling. And sometimes our intellectual self will know an answer, but our heart's not ready yet. Our heart isn't ready for that to actually be the case. We have to get those two systems in alignment to be able to hold perspective so we can live rightly. Now, a way to do that is through our value systems. Now, our value systems are those principles that guide us, those almost like our moral compass, so to speak, that we know how to make what matters most matter most. Now, another dimension of perspective when it comes to resiliency is the capacity to stay in the present moment. Resiliency is in the moment. It's not really in our past and it's not in our future. It's in the decisions we make in the moment. Now, when I'm working with persons, and again, I've worked with persons all around the world exploring these constructs of resiliency, and I tend to see 2 different ways that people broach this idea. Number one, I see groups of persons who are very stuck in the past. They're very entrenched in old stories or old narratives about themselves. There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of shame. Now, the other group of persons I see, they tend to be very focused on the future. They're forecasting things and they spend a lot of time with fear and anxiety because they're worried about things that haven't even happened yet. Anticipatory stress is one of the greatest forms of stress. And a lot of times what we see, worrying about something is actually worse than the actual event sometimes. So we want to stay in the present moment when possible. The third variable that I talk about in my work is the role of acceptance. Now, acceptance in theory has always been one of those things that it's pretty straightforward, but in practice, acceptance is hard to do, especially if you don't like the outcome, especially if you don't want to accept the particular circumstances. What I have learned, though, working with resilient persons, is that they have developed the skill of deciphering their controllables. They know what is within their control and they know what's not within their control. And they align their energy and their decision making with where they have agency, where they can actually have impact. They find ways to make meaning, to be able to find the next right decision, and they don't get stuck in things that they don't have control over. Now, I'm a behavioral scientist, so I'm very interested in human behavior from a particular lens, and we're going to talk lots about that as our series continues. But one tool that we use from a behavioral approach when it comes to acceptance is called the persist, pivot, and punt method. So let me tell you a wee bit about it. When you're faced with a difficult task, the first thing I want you to ask yourself is, can I persist? Can I actually just lean in to a wee bit of mental toughness or a little bit of, even embracing the discomfort just to be able to get the job done? Is that something that's available? Now, if that doesn't work for you, or if the cost is too great, option number 2 is you pivot, you shift, you adapt, you level up, even skill up, ask for help. Now, this is what we call cognitive nimbleness or flexible thinking. A lot of times when I'm working with folks who are stuck, they're practicing what we call brittle thinking, which means that they can't really think of other ways of solving problems. And we need you to be kind of nimble in your thinking to be able to find solutions. Now, if that's not working for you, or again, the cost is too great, option number 3 is you punt it down the field and you say, not today. You move on to the next item on your to-do list. There will always be enough on your to-do list that you don't need to get stuck. Now, the fourth variable of resilient people that I come upon is this idea of hope, or choosing to be hope filled. Now, where I learned about this in a very significant way was work I had done with our Canadian forces. And I recall working with a group of soldiers who had just come home from a deployment. And I was so curious about, what do soldiers look forward to? Like, what's on the horizon for them? So I asked the first soldier in that platoon, and they shared with me that before their deployment, they had painted half of their kitchen, but they only got half done. So on their first day off, they were going to finish painting their kitchen. The second soldier I spoke to, they shared with me that before their deployment, they had laid down hardwood floor at their house, but they only got half finished. So on their day off, that's what they were going to be doing. I spoke to each one of them in those platoons, and they all had half finished house projects, which I thought was a wee bit peculiar. So I asked their lieutenant later in the day, and I said, "Sir, what was that about?" And what he said was transformational. He said, "Doc, they leave half-finished projects as signs of hope for their families that they're coming home. So when their family sees that half-finished project, it is evidence left behind that I will come back and get that work done. It's a sign of hope." Now, I asked that very weathered lieutenant next. I said, "Sir, what you're proposing is hope as a choice." And he said, "Robyne, hope will always be a choice. And if you want to be of service to others, you need to stay hope filled." So my invitation for you, as you are doing the very important frontline essential work for our individuals with disabilities, being that person to help carry that load, I want to make sure that you can stay hope-filled. I want you to find a way to protect your hope, protect your peace. You don't want to surrender your joy. We need to hold the line. People are counting on us. And the fifth and the final variable in my theory of resiliency is this idea of humor. And what's interesting, when seasons get complicated and challenging and difficult, humor and joy and laughter and play, those are some of the first areas that get abandoned. But what we know is they actually serve a role in resiliency. It gives us an opportunity to catch our breath. It's interesting when I work with persons, often what I hear about is people talk about like newsroom humor or ER humor or, frontline humor, where like you actually have to carve out some moments, even in the midst of the chaos and the challenging circumstances, to pause and just have that little moment to catch your breath. Now, the biology actually backs this up. So like, for example, when you laugh, even in a difficult season, when you share laughter, your body releases a natural tranquilizer. So for that moment in time, your pain receptors are blocked, which means you can catch your breath. Now, what I see in my work is these 5 variables have created a constellation of things that people can lean into when they're faced with difficult challenges, seasons, setbacks. The reality with resiliency, it doesn't mean we're bulletproof. It doesn't mean we're not going to have bad days. We're not going to have to navigate big emotions. We're not going to have to stick handle challenges. We know that that is part of life. Life is hard. Life was hard before COVID-19 impacted our communities. Life is hard during COVID-19, and life will continue to be hard on the other side of this as well. That is something that history has shown us pretty consistently, that life is hard. But I want to take this moment to speak to you directly and let you know life is hard, but it's not because you're doing it wrong. You are doing the best you can with the tools you have to be able to make the next right decision, which involves practicing this resiliency. I trust that. I believe that people are doing the best that they can. When we're under stressors, when we're under challenge, when we're faced with difficult seasons, this is hard work. But one of the things that we're going to explore in our series is I am very confident in the human condition. And something that I know is that you can do hard things. So thank you, Merci Miigwech. I'm excited to meet you in our next segment when we talk all about stress, stress cycling, and stress regulation. So I'll see you shortly.